Good morning, everybody. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Apogee Online Meetup. My name is Oliver, and I'll be your host today. Because, of course, the situation that we currently face, we're all broadcasting from our homes today instead of our usual lovely London offices. And we're all very excited to have you joining today's conversation. Thank you for taking this time out. This is backed by popular demand. Today's event marks our 9th Apogee Online Meetup. And for those that have joined for the first time, as a reminder, our goal here is to be as interactive and as educational as possible. So let's just scan the agenda. After this short introduction, I'm going to give an Apogee perspective of what we've observed across logistics and supply chains while working across a broad set of customers. And today we're joined by Dave Holliday from Maersk, who's going to be talking about connecting and simplifying global supply chains. We then have our first window to answer your questions. And then we'll roll into a fireside chat between Dave and myself, and then have another good slot for questions from you. And then we'll close and wrap. So because we're all broadcasting from home, things are slightly different. So for today, how do you ask questions? You can do it directly in here with the On24 tool. So I hope that's nice and easy. Now, I think one of the things we have certainly learnt in these broadcasts is we highly encourage you to ask your questions as soon as you think of them. Don't wait towards the end where there tends to be a bit of a bottleneck of questions. So if something pops in, please do just ask away, and we look forward to those questions. So today's speaker is Dave Holliday, who's the API Platform Product Manager at A.P. Moller Maersk. Some of you may not be so familiar with Maersk, but Dave's got some fantastic content to bring to life the business and the scale of that business. So without further ado, please grab that drink, sit back in what I hope is a suitably ergonomic chair in your office, at home, I hope. Grab that drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's get started. Okay, so first of all, let's just give a bit of a very high level overview of what we as an Apogee have observed in the world of APIs in logistics and supply chains. Supply chains are immensely complex with lots of critical components. And these are essential services to keeping the world moving. And I suspect many of us, because of the conditions that we currently face, will be much more aware of the criticality of both logistics and the supply chains in moving food, trade, and everything that we can possibly think of. So let's distill this into kind of 3 key things. A lot of the companies that are in this industry were early adopters of technology. It made a lot of sense. There was lots of data to record and track, but there was lots of data to share with the numerous participants in these ecosystems. But of course, there was a consequence to some of that early adoption. A lot of that technology is still in place, and the world is moving ever faster. This technology is utterly critical, highly sensitive, wants to be protected. But often businesses, we find, want to be able to let this new world of external innovation and external partners to really flourish, to enjoy these network effects, whilst also making sure that this infrastructure is entirely safe and secure. So you want to decouple these two worlds. Another thing that we've observed is organizational structures can lead to kind of complexity So often these businesses have multiple business units. Sometimes there's quite a grey boundary between the competitive services of one and another. So sometimes they can even slightly compete with each other. But of course, what the businesses today, as part of a platform strategy, want to do is not surface up organizational complexity to the downstream participants, whoever they may be. And of course, what we're often talking about when it comes to the world of APIs and platforms is you need to execute differently. So we're moving from a world of strategic partnership, joint ventures, to a world of API ecosystems where participants can easily onboard and easily participate with your APIs. Secondly, scale. I think what you'll really enjoy in today's session is Dave's piece showing really the scale of the business. I mean, I turn into a small boy when I see the slide of all the assets that this company has. You know, from the size of the boats, the size of these enormous ports. But let's think about scale from the point of production to consumption. Let's split these two out. So from a production point of view, what I really enjoy about this story is like the pace of API adoption on the platform and this focus on automation to ensure that this can be done as efficiently as possible across this large business. And there's collaboration between the different business units. I think that will be probably something that will really resonate with a lot of you. And then from a consumption point of view, there's a great focus here on making it super easy for people to discover, onboard, and interact with Maersk via APIs. There's a nice story here of a company starting their API journey out with omnichannel APIs. I think that's very familiar from my observation across our customer base. These are great kind of initial candidates to expose to others. And then finally, new services and business models. So once you've got your initial set of APIs out and you're starting to see this kind of feedback loop, this virtuous cycle of data flowing into the business, you recognize that there is additional value that you can deliver to your end participants. And APIs are a great digital channel for building out new propositions cheaply and quickly, and being able to validate quickly and cheaply with external participants. So they're a great distribution channel for launching new digital products. Now, with these sort of companies, they're in this sort of gravitational pull between the two-sided market. You immediately collect really valuable data. So there's a significant opportunity for lots of these businesses to build new products based on driving insight out of that data, of which you may choose to monetize APIs directly, or you may be able to monetize indirectly through some other kind of joint partnership. So there's kind of three things to have in the back of your mind as we dive deeper into today's topic. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Oliver. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. Thank you to the Apogee team for inviting me along. Shame we couldn't do this in person at the London offices, but virtually is the new norm, it appears. So I'd like to just take the next kind of 10 minutes or so, walk you through what Maersk has been looking at with Apogee towards APIs, how we're approaching API development, and also touching into some of our architecture, Apogee-based architecture, how we're using environments, those kind of things. It's always nice to see how people are implementing this stuff. So, for those that aren't aware, Maersk's goal is to connect and simplify global supply chains. Predominantly, we've specialized in global containerized ocean transport with our massive network of over 700 vessels, some of them like the Triple E, capable of holding 18,000 containers at a time. holding roughly $500 million worth of goods on board a single vessel, traveling all over the world. We have trade lanes spanning the entire globe. So we can take a container from anywhere on Earth and drop it anywhere else on Earth. And that's our goal, really. We're there to make it easy to do so. Normally, we're an invisible industry, and everything just happens nicely underneath, and nobody really notices when everything's going really well. Supply chains are working beautifully. Nobody really notices all the bits and pieces underneath, but we are there making sure that containers are flowing every day. And the Maersk business is split into 4 major areas. So the one that everybody will likely be familiar with is our ocean transport. The big blue vessels carrying all of the containers, that's our bread and butter, and has been since the invention of containerized transport in the 1950s. But we spread into other areas as well. So we still have that ocean network, but we're also specializing in all of the other services around the containers themselves. The inland movements, the cleaning, the stacking, the racking, all sorts of different bits and pieces to do with containers we provide as part of our logistics and services arm. We also, in our APM Terminals brand, own 76 terminals around the world and provide in our Svitzer brand towage facilities, which is also the world's largest towage company. And in the terminals, terminals are there as the interface between the ocean and the land, and make sure that those containers are successfully discharged from the vessels, successfully loaded, and make their way inland to their final locations. We also have a manufacturing arm as well. So we don't only move them, we also manufacture the containers themselves. So we manufacture the steel boxes, the 40 foots, the 45 foots, the 20 footers, but we also have a very successful manufacturing arm in refrigerated containers in our reefer fleet. So if you need to move anything that requires refrigeration, atmosphere control, anything like that, we can do that too. So that's an overview of Maersk. So it's nice to paint a picture, and thank you, Oliver, for saying that supply chain is super complicated, because really it is. There's so many different moving parts inside a supply chain to get that raw material all the way to a finished good that you and I can buy on the shop shelf is just massively complicated. And today, really, the whole world works with the message you can see in front of you here, which is an EDI message. So majority of the world's supply chains today are integrated with EDI. So one system will generate a bunch of files, send them across to the other system. The other system will catch those files and process them. Files can be lost, files can be dropped, files can be malformed. They're very difficult to understand. And they require a huge amount of expertise to get up and running, to go, you know what, this is right. There's a huge amount of labor on the Maersk side to perform the integration, but also with our customers as well, to perform the flip-flop of that integration, to receive the data or to send the data to us. And it's all very complicated, and it could be significantly easier, significantly better. And really what we want to see is all the world communicating like this. So this is a JSON representation of very similar data. And this is what we see as the future for supply chain integrations. Simple, self-service, easy to consume data in a human-readable or mostly human-readable format, as long as you're comfortable with JSON. And it becomes very easy to weave the supply chain around the APIs that Maersk will be providing. We will continue, of course, to have EDI. EDI is the backbone of the majority of the world's supply chains, but we definitely see a shift in the industry. Everybody wants this to be easier. Everybody wants cheaper and faster and more standardized integrations. And we definitely see APIs as part of that future. And with that future, of course, we are working with Apogee to accomplish that. So we use the Apogee Edge Cloud to front all of our API traffic. And we're currently in the progress of really bringing all of the APIs across Maersk, whether that be internal APIs or some of our external facing APIs, all together into the Apogee platform, so that we can benefit from the rich analytics, the monitoring, the security pieces we can do. And when we're working with more of our kind of legacy estate, where we don't have beautiful JSON-based or REST kind of APIs already, taking those old SOAP services, taking those other services and transforming, translating, and adding a huge amount of business value using the Apogee layer. And to that end, this is a very simple representative architecture for how our API traffic flows. We're starting to use our domain of api.maersk.com. We don't yet have any customer-facing APIs that are fully published and out in the wild, but we will have over the next kind of few months or so, 6 to 12 months. And all of our traffic first flows through Akamai. And we've been working with Akamai for a very long time at Maersk, utilizing their WAF capabilities and bot management capabilities, general traffic security capabilities. And what that does is that's our front door. We then feed the traffic down from Akamai into the Apogee Edge Cloud, which is actually split across 3 Google Cloud regions for high availability. And then from there, we point the traffic towards the relevant target. And as you can imagine, a business the scale of Maersk, operating across so many different brands. We have the Maersk brand, we have our APM Terminals brand, we have Hamburg Südline and Alianca, we have Svitzer and Damco, we have Sealand Maersk and Safmarine and all of these different brands. And we have an awful lot of underlying architectures. We have an awful lot of different systems connecting everything together, powering those global supply chains. And so we see targets here that are a massive mix of different systems. So we have teams building out in Azure, we have teams building out in the Google Cloud Platform, we have teams using our on-premise data centers, we have teams utilizing brand new SaaS offerings that are also exposing APIs that we're going to be routing traffic through from Apogee. We have, you name it, we're probably routing traffic into it as a technology piece. And really what we're doing here is any of those teams, wherever they're hosting those APIs, whether it be Azure or GCP or whatever, they provide to us their backend target exposed nice and securely, and then we can get the traffic routing from Apogee down into that backend target. So nice and simple, nothing too complicated, but this provides us with the web application firewall and the deep security from Akamai. It provides us with the rich API management layer with analytics, monitoring, routing, transformation, etc. from Apogee, and then flows the traffic into all of these systems. So with this stack, we can support any of the APIs across the whole of Maersk, across all of the Maersk brands. We're also looking at and working with a few teams inside Maersk today to explore the Apogee Edge micro gateway, which is a really nice little service that you can run, actually runs on Node.js. Just run that locally and then run traffic through that so that you don't have to have traffic going basically up out of the data center down through this stack. Instead, you can just have service-to-service communication directly between those services through a locally installed Edge micro gateway. And we're exploring this with a few teams. There's the ability to run these in Kubernetes as pods or services as sidecars. And there's also Istio mesh integration, which we're investigating as well. We don't have the Apogee hybrid solution, but we think this is a really nice step for the services that have latency requirements such that they can't go up and down through the cloud stack. Or have security and data sensitivity requirements where we actually don't want that traffic leaving that particular part of the DC or particular cluster or whatever. So far, testing is working really well. Works really nicely. And my role here at Maersk is the product manager for Maersk's API management platform. We love three-letter acronyms at Maersk. So this one has one, it's called MAM. And here we are providing for all of our product teams and development teams inside Maersk. We provide basically Apogee as a service towards those teams. What we want with our platform is to make sure that teams can get up and running with Apogee as fast as physically possible, can create a proxy. I have a kind of a general objective to be able to build a proxy in 30 seconds and move that into production in the next 30 seconds. And to that end, we are providing 4 environments to our customers, our platform customers, which are all of the development teams across all of the Maersk brands inside Maersk. And that falls into 4 environments across 2 separate Apogee organizations. And I'll kind of make sure that's well understood. So our first playground environment sits inside a completely separate Apogee organization. And with this, this is where you start your life inside Maersk working with Apogee. We ask teams to do some basic Apogee training to understand where Apogee will be used in their architecture, what it really means to build decent APIs. And then they get access to our playground environment. From the playground environment, they can build their own proxies, they can set up the routing, they can understand if they need to use caches, target servers, key value maps. We can work out the potential API product and developer app config that they require to consume those APIs later. Is this a customer-facing API or not a customer-facing? We can have all of these conversations in a safe environment where it doesn't matter if you break something. Also, it's pretty hard to break things anyway, but if you were to break something or clear a cache accidentally or something like that, then there's no harm done. What we've done is then build an automation system and a platform around the moving of that proxy from playground up through the environments. So what we can then do is we can move from playground. We can get that proxy up through CDT, pre-production, and then into production. And I've got a couple of screenshots that show how the platform works to that respect. And our CDT pre-production and production environments are a totally separate Apogee organization again. This is the one that's split globally across the 3 different Google Cloud regions. And provides those 3 production level environments for teams to perform their testing. Testing and validation of routing, testing and validation of caching and key value maps, that kind of thing. And then ultimately in production is where our customers will be consuming along with some sort of sandbox, and where all of the teams then ultimately consume those APIs. So we leverage 2 separate Apogee organizations, and across those we have those 4 environments. Any questions, of course, feel free to ask. So we call this all the Maersk API Management Platform, MAM, and it provides this automation layer for Maersk and people inside Maersk. What we've done here, we've built this little form for people to create the API proxy. We've essentially built ourselves an internal portal, which allows teams to perform the relevant activities and automate across the Apogee stack. So this is asking for some pertinent information. What brand is this proxy for? What's the name of the proxy? What's the base path? Capturing some other useful information for searching and business reasons later. And then you hit create. And we go off and create that proxy with those defaults directly into Playground for you. What we can then do is give you a direct link into Apogee, so you can get straight off and running in the Playground environment. We then have a deployment feature, which then allows you to drag out that proxy from the Playground environment and deploy it into the next environment over, which in this case from Playground would be into CDT. Then you can take it from there and you can progress up the stack using the platform as well. We also have integration with monitoring alerting using Datadog too. That's something we provide automatically integrated into the Apogee platform. For those that are interested, we have a shared flow for logging out to Datadog, and we log all the data out using a service callout as part of the proxy post flow. So what this platform allows you to do is to get teams up and running instantly with a proxy, to then progress that proxy through all of our environments all the way to production, capturing the relevant audit information and the relevant trails so that security and information security and all of our audit teams and stuff are perfectly happy with the process, but allows teams to get up and running within a minute. So we are very happy so far. We've been working with a few teams inside Maersk as they're building their new proxies, and people have been pretty happy with it so far. We then look at let's go to so what's next for us. So what's next as part of this platform? What we're really looking at now is and our first focus was to make sure that technically we can get traffic routing through Apogee, and that we can help teams to get that routing set up as fast as possible. And now that we have loads of APIs running through Apogee, we're starting to turn our focus to, okay, of these APIs, and I'm sure we'll cover this as part of our continued conversation this morning, we're kind of turning our focus towards what does it mean to design and build a decent API, a strong, standardized, industry standard API. And here at Maersk, we are massively pushing industry standards. We think it's really the only way to play inside the supply chain, is to be working on publishing and sharing and being super open about what the industry standards should be. But of course, we have hundreds of development teams building all sorts of awesome solutions for our customers across the supply chain. So making sure that every single team understands what a good API looks like and understands that concept in rich enough detail to be able to design autonomously an API is a really tough challenge. So what we're looking to do as part of the platform is to provide design tools, linting and standardization against the industry standards as they get developed, and also to provide a rich ecosystem for searching, testing, and consuming all of the APIs internally. We're looking at the developer portal options as part of Apogee, Drupal, and integrated to expose our APIs towards Maersk customers, external. But internally, we also have to provide that rich searching experience as well. So we're building that as part of the platform. And then as teams come on board and say, yeah, we've either got a great idea for an API, or we've already got an API, but we'd love to know what we should be changing and how we should be standardizing, we'll have the tooling in order to support that. And of course, security is a hot topic. It's always been a hot topic, but even more hot when it comes to APIs, because you've got such a wide surface to attack. And normally a surface that's also quite well documented, which poses some interesting security concerns. So we want to make sure that everybody's use of Apogee and their API design themselves is as secure as possible. So lots of different shared flows for implementing security pieces, lots of automated testing, and working with teams to make sure that they follow the Maersk principles of secure by design. So that's my little spiel about Maersk. I hope that was useful. Ask whatever questions you like, and I'll hand it back to you, Oliver.
Thanks very much, Dave. This stuff and a great storytelling as well. And I've been keeping an eye on the questions as they flow through, of which we have many. So we'll tackle a few right now, and we'll tackle some during the fireside chat and the final Q&A. And for the eagle-eyed, they might have noticed my 3-year-old son walking in only a moment ago. So he's keen to join as well. As a reminder, ask your questions just in the Q&A window in this On24 tool. So I have noticed actually quite a few questions coming in around why Akamai in front of Apogee, and I guess that's something that we've certainly seen across quite a lot of our customers. But you know, why is that the case for Maersk, Dave?
So we've been working with Akamai for a long time. I know that Apogee has a similar product as part of its portfolio in kind of Apogee Sense, but we've already been working with Akamai, and we have that implemented for all of our customer-facing web traffic today. We started off actually way back with our journey there, looking at bot management capabilities and providing kind of standardized WAF. And so we've just continued to use that for all of our APIs. Akamai provides us with a automated and very strong security layer. So for those that aren't familiar with web application firewalls, we get DDoS protection, we get SQL injection protection, we get rate limiting, burst thresholding, we get lots of very clever security pieces, so that we can mostly ensure it's not perfect the whole time, because there's always new bot networks and always new kind of security vulnerabilities popping up. But Akamai provides us with a very confident position that all of the traffic flowing into our APIs is healthy, successful, and non-nefarious traffic, and that's what we rely on it for. We also use it as that front door to route traffic around. So moving from like the old gateways towards Apogee, it's been very useful to have Akamai as that front door.
Great, thank you. I also noticed a question from Jose, who comes from TomTom. And it's actually it's a good question, and it's something that I think a lot of our customers do reflect on. Is are you thinking about SDKs? Do your APIs come with SDKs?
Not today, no, but we're definitely thinking about them. It's an extra level of complexity to manage and to distribute and to sort out that really we're not in a place to support yet. But definitely it's on the radar. I think for some of our, either we'll produce some sort of Maersk SDK that covers all of them, or kind of API specific SDKs. But yeah, it's something that's on the roadmap, but nothing that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I mean, my advice to customers is always don't optimize too early. And I think, for certain types of businesses, it does make sense. But as you say, it's another asset that you've got to continually update and maintain. Yep. Okay, so there's another good question here. Can you elaborate a bit? This is from Jesus from Capgemini. Can you elaborate a bit on the secure by design practice of Maersk?
Yeah, cool. So I'll start off by saying I am not the security expert inside Maersk, but I do work with our security teams alongside our API design teams. And really what it means to us is to make sure that from that very first inception of an idea, that first little inkling of an idea of, we should maybe build that API, or if we build this web app, it would be absolutely amazing, but it needs all these APIs underneath. As soon as that thought hits, for all of our development teams across Maersk to understand what it means to design that in a secure way. So we've suffered like many other companies, from having lots of the security thinking coming way too far right in the process. And there's just a little security review maybe at the end of a project or the end of development, which inevitably produces a whole host of horrors, which then have to be backtracked through the project, and it's a very painful and expensive process. So what we're really looking to do is to bring all of those activities as far left as possible, but also so that teams can take full responsibility for the stack, and we can have total assurance that they are building secure solutions. And yeah, I mean, that's what it means to us, making sure that teams can build secure solutions.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we'll roll into the fireside chat in a moment. Let's just take one more question, and we've still got lots more, so don't worry if I haven't got to yours yet. Gleb from Telia, apart from proxy creation, what self-service features do you offer for your internal developers?
Great question. So we also provide cache automation, key value map automation, target server automation, so that they can get up and running with those things and manage them across the two Apogee organizations really easily. Because we have those two Apogee organizations, we end up having to build all these things because one Apogee organization doesn't know about the other Apogee organization. The other side for internal consumption is API product automation as well, and also developer automation. So whenever we create a proxy, we also create a corresponding API product for internal consumption. And anybody then wanting to register an app to consume the product and get the relevant set of keys and secrets and stuff, all they have to do is register an app, because we assume that they'll also be a developer. So the few kind of normal bits you'd get, say if you used an external portal, an integrated portal to register yourself and then to create the app, and also from the publishing side where you create the product, we've automated away as well. And we're trying to look at further levels of automation for teams that just don't need to do anything complex in Apogee. So there are a bunch of teams that maybe just need to do a bit of API key, maybe a small amount of custom statistics collection, that kind of stuff. Well, we can easily spin up the XML for the proxy just from asking a few pointed questions during proxy creation, and then manage things like targets per environment. So that's kind of where we're going next with the actual Apogee automation too.
Fabulous. Great. Well, let's roll into the fireside chat. So this is just an opportunity for Dave and I just to have a bit of a conversation, and I will, in this, keep an eye on the questions as they flow in, and there have been many, so that's a good problem to have, and you're pleased to know that some of them kind of resonate with some of the themes that I wanted to explore. Perhaps Dave, first of all, actually, you're a product manager, and I know I'm an ex-product person, so I'm quite passionate about the idea of managing platforms and digital assets as products. How do you define your role when you're perhaps explaining it to your colleagues, or indeed the external world? What's your mandate and your mission?
Great question, Oliver. So my mandate and mission is to make it really easy for teams to build APIs, so that our development teams inside Maersk can really focus on adding business value, rather than having to focus on infrastructure and routing and is this domain hooked up to this domain? Is this thing secure? Is this not secure? Is this the right way to, all of those questions that crop up during development. It's my job to make all of those things go away, and to make sure that our teams have as fast as possible speed to market with any of the APIs that get developed across Maersk. There's also another side to my role, which is to make sure that all of our external API pieces are well supported. I'm not technically responsible for those, but I make sure that all of the teams are well supported in their use of Apogee, trained, etc., etc. Yeah. So, help.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, that's a great definition. I think for many of our listeners, they're always quite keen to hear, how things kind of started. This is often where there's lots of difficulty, not just kind of perhaps getting your head around technology landscapes, but also, the mindset of execution and getting this thing moving. It probably feels a bit like one of your large tankers, leaving ports, and, lots of energy has to get in before it gets up to speed. What were some of the lessons learned in your initial exposure of APIs?
Oh yeah, just so many lessons. I think the biggest lesson that we learned is don't share your APIs with anybody too early. So as soon as you've got an API out there, and either it gets accidentally discovered by people and then starts to be used, or you share it with a few people as part of maybe a beta or even an alpha moniker, it's very hard to backtrack from that position. So even with all of the caveats in the whole world saying this spec will change every 10 minutes, please do not consume, it will be consumed and it will be folded into a production application. And then you will have a lot of struggle bringing that back again. So probably the biggest learning for us is take the time and really appreciate what it means to expose that API. And that covers all of the aspects of exposing an API out. So what does the API look like? What does it feel like? How do I hit it? How do I test it? What standard data am I returning? What does the error handling look like? How can I explain that to someone? And really, of all of those parts, which parts do we think we will change our mind on in the next few months? So making sure all of those things are really well considered. It doesn't have to take very long, but just taking the couple of weeks there to really dive into that and understand that is probably one of our biggest learnings, because we still have APIs out in the wild that are consumed by lots of applications that we love to be able to sunset, but it proves very difficult to do that, right? So that's probably the biggest learning there.
Thanks. And what was the type of the profile of some of these early requesters of APIs? Because I guess as a product person, that's an important moment to get sort of that initial feedback, as long as it's the right type of feedback to listen to. I mean, so how influential? So who were they, and what sort of type of profile, and how influential were they in steering your initial thinking on API design?
Yeah, so we see and have seen lots of different parties very interested in API-based integration with Maersk. Because we cover the whole gamut of the supply chain, there are so many different types. But the kind of the initial set were either existing customers or kind of people operating on behalf of existing customers that were looking to optimize parts of their supply chain that Maersk was working in. So either looking to optimize a particular route from Asia to Europe, for example, and then taking their time to work out, okay, inside my supply chain, I have to get this data to Maersk and retrieve this. I have to track this, this, and this. I work with all of these different partners. And as they were looking at that efficiency program, a lot of these people were realizing, well, maybe the existing integrations that we have can't be as real time as we need, or can't be as available as we need, or as trackable or as monitorable as we need. And it was those type of conversations for our customers that then drove them to come and talk to us. Also customers that were updating and upgrading their own internal infrastructure. Lots of our customers use transport management systems, and everybody's shifting into the cloud, of course. Such a big thing. Everybody's performing some level of digital transformation. And as part of that, APIs get thrown around a lot, integrating different SaaS solutions, bringing data from this system to this system. APIs is really where that conversation begins. So of our customers that were doing those things, that's also where those conversations came from too.
Okay, great. And I mean, you're trying to encourage some fairly major players to move from the world of EDI over to APIs. I mean, so how are you hoping to incentivize those that have already built something that probably is considered, quite delicate, and it works? How do you incentivize them to move over? Because I guess ultimately you don't want to be in this position in a few years where you've still got a larger state of EDI integrations and a larger state of APIs.
So being realistic about it, we will definitely still have a large EDI estate, covering the majority of the world's supply chains, right? But the way that we really look at APIs is to be providing such an easier route to integration that it just makes most sense to perform that API integration. And lots of the parties and customers, etc., that we work with don't have the infrastructure to support APIs right now, which is absolutely fine. But of those that do, we hope that having those APIs available that provide the same business functions as EDI, or provide them faster or more data or more accurate data, that kind of stuff will be the incentive. But also, I don't think that lots of our customers need a particular incentive. The whole world is moving towards that API integration everywhere, right? And so lots of customers are coming to us and saying, we'd love to use these APIs without there needing to be a particular incentive.
Okay, great. And for somebody who's not in the guts of the industry, I mean, I understand there's quite significant tooling around EDI integrations in the various software stacks that the incumbents use today. What is it like? And I guess that, that's a well-oiled machine. I mean, yes, there's lots of variation and ambiguity in the EDI format, but there is at least this tool chain. What is it like? You start talking about APIs for these other partners that you're working with.
So probably one of the biggest challenges we always face is in data. The rich tool chains that we have to set up EDI integrations already have access to a lot of the data inside Maersk, and we find it's and I think this is a big kind of cloud transformation, digital transformation problem, is making sure that we have the data available when we want to build a spiffy API in Azure or GCP. Using the latest technologies, you want to write it in Golang and have this super awesome database underneath. Getting the data into that database in the first place is really difficult, and is definitely one of the largest challenges that we have. We actually find the writing of the API itself, the exposure of data as JSON, is something that comes very easily to all of our development teams. It's much easier to find a development team that knows how to spit out some JSON data than a development team that knows how to generate an EDI format, for example. But getting that data in the first place to support the API, and then also being able to support that business process in a performant manner, is probably the big difficulty. Being able to have, an API is pretty useless if it's going to take 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes to respond. So there's also then that extra layer of complexity in making sure that we can provide the data quickly to satisfy these kind of modern API demands.
Great. There's a very interesting question that's kind of flowed in, which I think is a very common theme amongst our customer base. So the question is from Ananth from TUI. By centrally managing, i.e. not letting every team to manage their own APIs, will you not risk becoming a bottleneck? So what's that balance that you're trying to strike? Apologies, I must have misrepresented the platform. So the platform that we're building is for complete self-service of our development teams. So we want to provide the tooling, the standards, and the guardrails for the teams to build their own proxies, work inside Apogee, but ultimately build awesome business value generating APIs. And we want them to do that in a completely self-service way. So my team builds platform components and automation to support the self-service of teams. And then we also provide consultancy and training and general kind of advice on APIs as well. But everything we build is for self-service. Yeah, great. There's been quite a few questions that have come in around industry groups and API standards and the DCSA. What has your experience been like working with industry groups in evolving API standards?
Standards are difficult. Anything is standard by how non-standard everything is. I think it's really, really difficult. But really, the big thing for Maersk recently is the DCSA, is the Digital Container Shipping Association. And I'm definitely not the most expert in talking about it, but I can provide kind of a rough idea of how it's working. So the DCSA is looking to provide those industry standards, and also really embracing modern technology and producing API specifications. How that looks inside Maersk is that we're then making sure that all of the teams know and understand what that means when they're building the APIs. Of course, if you're just building an internal API, and it's kind of working at that system or process level, then you don't have to care so much, and we relax some of the boundaries around API assurance and design. But when we're looking to build customer-facing APIs, the first thing we're doing now is making sure that of those APIs, that they adhere to any standards that have been published. But it's really, really difficult, and it takes a long time to get those standards set, and then to train and to teach and to make sure that those are adhered to. And there aren't standards yet for everything across the whole supply chain. So lots of APIs our teams are building don't have those standards. And so we're also trying to make sure that those teams, we just apply a little bit of sensible thinking as to what that future standard could look like. And also keep in our back pocket a decent versioning strategy, so that eventually when those APIs are reversioned for any public-facing standards, that we have the decent strategy to do so.
Great. In fact, there is a question that has flown through around versioning. I mean, what is your pattern or vision around versioning of APIs?
Being brutally honest, as always, it's still something we are discussing internally to really work out what the right way of doing this is. I know that Apogee quite likes you to version with a base path. It's kind of built towards that strategy, but something we'd like to have is some sort of accept header with versioning in there. And then things like proxy chaining and other strategies to pull from the right backend target. We already have multiple APIs out in the wild that have different versioning strategies. And so at the moment, we're working with those different teams to bring them all together into something that makes sense. But it's just a brutally difficult topic. And as soon as you have one agreement from someone else has a really decent argument against another way of doing it. So I think we'll end up flowing down the accept header route, but it is difficult.
Right. And an awful lot of time can be lost in discussing these sort of things.
Yeah.
What about IoT? I mean, there's been a lot of buzz over the years around IoT. What's the story around IoT and APIs at Maersk? And where are you seeing kind of impact?
Yeah, our whole IoT is a massive thing for Maersk, as you would imagine. Being able to connect and understand what our vessels and containers are doing in real time is really it's not just our future; it's where we are today. So we can track all of our vessels in real time. Dry containers cause a problem because they don't have any power, and they don't have any kind of hardware in there for the tracking. So we're looking into that. But our reefer network, our refrigerated network, has always been connected. We're actually the first brand out into the market to provide a fully connected remote container management solution, so that all of our reefers can be tracked using the hardware that's on board the reefer container. And all of that traffic is also flowing through Apogee as well. So all of those containers communicate over various kind of either cellular or through a vessel bridger over satellite, and all of those end up being collated in various different IoT hubs. But all of them are fronted by APIs and all the API traffic routes through Apogee.
Great, thanks. Got a very interesting question here. Do you provide an opportunity of business users, to create APIs? And that's Christian.
Not really yet, because I haven't had a business user ask me to create an API yet. And really, our platform is providing a proxy to an existing API. So probably the conversation would have to be deeper there to work out, okay, what do we mean by that API? Is it actually maybe surfacing particular data out of an underlying system? But the platform itself is basically a single click to create a proxy. So we could easily have a non-technical person, as it were, create a proxy. But likelihood is they wouldn't have anywhere to route the traffic to.
Yeah, great. Now, I know anecdotally that you've had some very interesting experiences of some of those initial APIs that have been released out into the wild. There was an anecdote you shared around a transport management example of 10,000 requests for 10,000 containers. Can you perhaps just give that little story, because I think it's a really great anecdote to our listeners.
Oh yeah, there's lots of these. I mean, we have had a bunch of APIs out in the wild for a long time, and working with some customers, and really, we're starting to take APIs super seriously, and it's becoming very, very important for Maersk to be building decent, awesome APIs. But some of those initial conversations with customers were fantastic. You'd share an API, and they go, absolutely fantastic. Can I call this API with 10,000 containers? Well, no, that's not really what we built that for. We built it to handle individual container searches. And there's other ones where we've built APIs that end up having kind of Maersk specific codes in them. So kind of some sort of internal representation. In this case, it was a location. And there, customer A would say, well, I've got no way to correlate that. I don't know what that location is. It doesn't follow any industry standard. I can't do anything with that data. And that's mostly because we were building APIs with the wrong frame. So we were building them to initially support our own web applications as we continue to build out Maersk.com. And the thinking there just didn't stretch into, maybe some other people could benefit from these APIs. Now, as soon as we had that frame, and our teams had that frame, the whole design and thinking behind the APIs really started to mature quickly. But before that, when we were just building our own API for our own web app and hooking it together and going job done, it actually ended up with lots of APIs that had lots of internal detail, worked perfectly for our apps. But then as soon as that first customer demand comes in, it dies very quickly. As I say, can I call this 1,000 times or whatever? So yeah, it's that's been a big learning.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks very much, Dave. And I'm just keeping an eye on the clock, and we're close to having to wrap today's session up. And I think. What I love particularly about what you've shared today is this focus on automation, so that within this large business, you can let these business units and the individuals within those business units focus on value. What are they trying to do as easily as possible, and creating it as a slick machine to get things into production. Time to value. That's my one takeaway. Thank you very much. And I hope you have appreciated that I've tried to answer as many questions from you in the audience during the fireside chat. We had so many flow in, I thought I'd just weave in as many as possible. So next steps, please do fill out feedback. Today was a slightly different, but we always enjoy your feedback and any thoughts, so we can make the next session even better. Please put in a reminder for June 26th, which will be when our next online meetup will be. And finally, both Google and Maersk have issued some very important statements, how each organization is helping during these quite extraordinary times. So please do read these articles to understand what we're doing to help our customers. Well, with that, we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you for so many questions. We've tried to tackle quite a few of those that have been asked, and I hope that we'll see you next time. And to Dave, thank you so much for sharing so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.